Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And my card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. If you're not familiar with the Color Throwdown Challenge, it's just for fun. There's a new one every week, and there's a group of us that play along with it. And I will have a link to it in my blog post, which is linked directly below the video in the description box. You can check it out for inspiration. You can play along. Like I said, it's just for fun, and it's a great way to get some ideas, get some inspiration. I get asked that a lot. You know, where do I get color inspiration, etc.? This is one of the main places because, yeah, it's fascinating seeing everyone's interpretation of the colors and then all those that play along as well. And yeah, this one threw me for a loop for the first minute. When I first saw it, I was like, you know, and then you get thinking, come up with some ideas. I, started pulling together some products. I used Simon Says stamp. It's kind of blown out in my lights, but the Charming Daisy wafer die, I've already done a video or two, I forget, using it. Love it. It'll always be featured in future videos as well, because you guys know I love me some floral wafer dies. This one, no exception. And then I finally got a chance to use the Whirl diamond plate. Again, there we go, wafer die. And this one's definitely going to get used as well more and more in the future because it just, yes. So, simple ink blending, some splatter, baker's twine because I'm back on that again, combined with some oldie but goodie stamp sets that have been out for a really long time. So, as always, links to everything I used are in the description box below, and then keep watching and I'll show you guys how I made this card. So I did all of my die cutting first. So I've got pieces of Simon's Smooth White cardstock, and like I said in the intro, I pulled together all sorts of different supplies to make this card, and I die cut the cardstock using the Charming Daisy wafer die. And I'm going to do this twice because I thought it'd be cute to have two of them on my card front. So, ran it through my EMPRESS machine. Lots of questions about this machine still. It's great, honestly. I started with the EMPRESS Mini because that was all I was able to get. Goodness, it's been about a year now. And then was able to get the full-size EMPRESS machine, the big one. And that's what I use because that's the only space I have, and I can use my mini plates on there. Do you need the mini plates? No. Again, use what works for you, and if you're happy with your die cut machine, that's great. Like, I'm just like with everything. I'm always curious. Too curious for my own good and my own pocketbook most of the time. But anyhow, I did my die cutting and set aside the background, which. As soon as I die cut it, like I knew the detail would be there, but man, I'll show it like later on in the video. So I took my die cut pieces for the Charming Daisy and I just stuck them onto my grip mat. And like the title of the video says, this is a very easy ink blending. Anybody can do this. I'm using different colors of Simon's Pawsitively saturated inks. So for the greenery, I started with LIMELICIOUS, which is the like lime brighter green. And then I went in with Fairway, which is just a bit darker. And for my blending, I'm just using some Waffle Flower brushes. Any sort of blending brushes will work. Yeah, these ones I just like when I'm wanting to get into a little more like detail areas. And also helps me, like keeps me from getting ink like absolutely everywhere because they're smaller. I use the 1 Plus, which is the slightly larger round ones for the majority of the blending. So like on these, the Daisy pieces. And right now I'm using Cadette ink, which is like a medium blue ink. And then I'm going in with Royal ink and a tiny brush. This is the 0 Plus shader brush from Waffle Flower. And that color I'm keeping more concentrated towards just the very, like the base of these little petals. So just going in there and adding that. And the thing to remember always with the Simon Says stamp Pawsitively saturated inks is these do soften and dry back as they dry. So they look much more intense when you first apply them. But once you like let them fully dry, like absorb into the cardstock and dry, and they do soften. And one of the perks of that is like your blending doesn't have to be that perfect. It kind of takes care of some of that for you, which I always love. I'll take any little help I can get. So for the flower centers, I used Cappuccino and Mocha. And then to assemble these, simple. Super, super simple. You just layer them together. That's it. Like, definitely not rocket science. Definitely not difficult in any way, shape, or form. So I adhered the layers together, stuck the top on, and then you can choose how you want to adhere the stems. And then there's an individual leaf that die cuts as well, that you can choose whether or not you want to use it. So once I got the florals adhered together, I'm going to adhere them to their stems. And I was like, do I want to shorten the one stem? Because, I'm going to put them together and I don't want them like the exact same. But then decided to adhere them both in the same spot. And then I'm just going to cut that stem down a little bit later. And then the individual leaves, I just adhered in different spots, again, to keep these from being the exact same. So just little tiny dabs of craft tacky glue. And then I just let it dry and they're good to go. So once I've got my little daisies adhered, these are kind of the star of the show. So that was, in a sense, the bulk of the card. And then I'm skipping to the inside of the card. There's always a method to my madness. So my card base is going to be a top folding A2 white note card. And I put it into my MISTI. And I'm using 2 different stamp sets on the inside of the card. I'm using the Friend Greetings set. This came out a couple years ago. And I inked up the sentiment I wanted to use, and I'm using the LIMELICIOUS ink. So I inked that up, stamped that onto the inside of the card. And then the other one I pulled out was the Inside Friendship Messages set that also came out a couple years ago. And picked one of the sentiments from that set as well. Lined that up. That one I'm stamping with the MOCHA ink. And then in that same set, the Inside Friendship Messages, there's a solid little heart image. So I just stuck that to an acrylic block and I'm stamping it with the CADETTE ink. And I inked it up, stamped it once, and without re-inking it, I'm getting the 2nd generation and then the 3rd generation. So I'm getting those 3 different shades of blue, but with just one inking. So now the inside of the card is done. And I did this on purpose because I want to adhere these other elements to the outside of the card and then add splatter. So I took the Whirl background, or the Whirl diamond plate that I die cut, and I'm adhering my daisies to it. Applied the adhesive to the second one and then remembered I was going to trim it down. So I'm like holding the daisy, trying not to drop it because there's glue all over the back of it. And then trimmed just the end of it with my scissors and then adhered that. And then I'm going to add some baker's twine. So I've got some brown and white baker's twine. So I'm going to wrap this around this panel. And this was why I purposely didn't add any adhesive to the leaves, because I knew I was going to tuck the baker's twine underneath the leaves of this daisy here. So got that in place. Going to make my knot. Use my reverse tweezers. These are always a must-have in the craft room, and I've talked about this many times. It's also, like, in my opinion, a must-have to have multiple pairs. I have many pairs of these because when I only had one, they walked off constantly. Now that they have siblings, I haven't lost a pair since. They all stick together. It's great. Anyway, tied my bow. Everything's good to go, and this was the most tedious part, and even this literally took about a minute. I put thin foam squares on the back of this die cut so that it pops it up just a little bit to give it that extra dimension. So now it's stuck directly to the card base, and now I'm going to add splatter. And with the splatter, I was being a bit extra. I was using Blueprint Sketch Distress Paint. Put a little bit on my palette, added a bit of water, and I was like, this is not the right shade of blue. So rather than grabbing something like Salty Ocean, probably would have been the perfect shade. It didn't even occur to me. It was like the paint was already poured out. I'm just going to make it work. So I added a bit of Lucky Clover Distress Paint to this. And I was still a little like, I was just, it's funny, some of the things a person will fixate on, like it's splatter. It would have been fine just as is. It would have been fine, but whatever. Mucked with it a bit, just used a little drop. It looks like there's a ton of paint here. There's actually not. And added a little bit of water just to water it down a little bit more. Use my fan brush and then added splatter. Not a ton of splatter, just a bit. For me, this is a bit. For some, this might be like total overkill. But again, you do you. If you don't like splatter, don't worry about it. You don't have to do it. I like it. It's just fun. So splattered that onto the card, and then once I was happy with it, we're good to go. So I'm letting that dry, and then I grabbed just a scrap of brown cardstock from my little scrap bin, and I'm using another sentiment from that first stamp set, the Friend Greetings stamp set, and got that lined up in my MISTI, used my anti-static powder on that cardstock, and then I'm going to ink up and stamp the sentiment with clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to coat this with Simon's Detail White embossing powder. So get that on there, tap off the excess. I'm going to melt this with my heat tool till everything is smooth and shiny and melted. And then once this is melted, I'm just going to use my guillotine trimmer to trim this down. It just, again, it depends on my mood. I managed to line this up like perfectly straight. Doesn't usually happen. That's usually when I'll use my sentiment label, wafer dies, things like that. But I managed to get this stamp straight, so I just use my guillotine trimmer and trim this down around the sentiment. And then once this is trimmed down, to adhere it to the card base, I'm using foam squares again. I just used the regulation thickness ones, because I use the thin ones on the background. So I put just regular foam squares and I'm kind of tucking them in here where I'll be able to hide them so that it will adhere the sentiment into place. So just tuck those into place, peeled off the backing, and then I can press this sentiment into place onto the card front. So I just made sure I had little foam squares kind of in all those little open areas, and then got that adhered. And then as my final little bit of embellishment, I have some sparkling clear confetti pieces. So this is another reason why I think I'm gonna love this background wafer die, is popping it up like this. I can tuck, larger embellishments slightly under. I don't know why I love doing that. So put a few of these into place and then just adhered them with little dabs of craft tacky glue. And then once I was happy, which I wasn't at this point, I had to add just one more. Why not? So once I got the final one into place, this card is complete. So yeah, the detail on that Whirl diamond plate die cut, love it. I love how the paint kind of seeped into it too a little bit here and there. I don't know. It's love it. Anywho, like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to all the things in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that, and all the info will be there. The link to my blog post, the supply list, links to all of that, so you can just check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have you, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.